popcorn. What do we need to know? Well, first of all, this is going to happen very fast. So whatever you need to have out right now. I have my popcorn. Obviously, there are a couple different varieties of popping corn. Sometimes you only have one available. Sometimes you have a whole bunch. Experiment and see what you like. And the other essential, unless you have an air popper, which I personally don't like, is a high heat oil. You want something that's been expeller pressed and that's been refined to a high heat, or that has a high smoke point. I have my measuring cup just for continuity, and then I want salt and butter, so I've already measured out 2 tablespoons, and I kind of know the amount of salt that I want. If I try and measure it out, I'm just gonna mess it up. Now I have 2 stock pots for a couple of reasons. A few of those I've gone over on the show before. Another one is that I have one that I kind of baby, and I have another one that I'm not afraid to thrash on. Anything that I do that would not be awesome for the stock pot, that guy. Now I used to have one of those crank pots, the whirly pots that stirs it for you, and they're a lot of fun and they work great. And I got about 7 years of use out of mine before it broke, but there's nothing wrong with using a stock pot, and this is a little bit easier to clean. You can also use a bistro pan if you want for a lower quantity of popcorn. Again, I kind of like one thing that I can thrash on so that I'm not potentially messing up all of my cookware. If I was going to use this, I would probably shake it a little bit more with the lid on because it kind of has a wider surface area and I'm not going to get as much popcorn. But you'll see with this guy, I'm just going to kind of leave it there after I get the oil coating all of the kernels. So I'm going to go high heat and probably about a 1/4 cup of oil. Let that get nice and hot. Now I'm also going to take a couple of tester kernels and just drop them in there, get them nice and coated in the oil, and just leave them. And that will be my cue for when the oil is hot enough to start popping my corn. Now this is too much popcorn for one guy, but I do sometimes like to make it for the week, like to stick a few bags into my lunch. And I'm gonna make a couple popcorn videos in the near future, so I stocked up. But I don't usually buy this much at one time. It does actually, like any food product, go bad over time. Inside this shell, this grain is made up of about 20% water. And what happens in here is that the water begins to boil and the water begins to expand, and the inside of that grain actually becomes gelatinous for a little bit before it turns into this foam that just kind of springs out. And that's why a piece of popcorn kind of looks like a mushroom cloud, because it is a mini explosion, and then hear that? And then it cools very fast, and that's how you get the popcorn. But over time you can lose some of that water content, and it makes the popcorn a little more difficult to pop. It makes it a little bit more chewy. You get more seeds in there. You get more incomplete pops. I forgot to start my butter. You don't need to melt this separately. You can wait until the popcorn is popped, throw the butter in, shake it. But with this much popcorn, it's probably going to come up to about here. If you're only doing about a 1/2 cup in a stock pot this size, you can definitely get away with putting everything in, shaking it while it's hot, and serving. Salt at the ready. If you don't have 2 oven mitts, you can use This guy here. And the reason I don't constantly shake it is that the popcorn is always springing up, leaving the kernels at the bottom. So once it starts going, it's actually a really self-stirring process, and I really don't need to pay that much attention until the end. I do want to make sure that all of the oil is coating all of the popcorn, because that's how you get it nice and hot. An oil-coated piece of popcorn is going to get hotter than just an air-popped piece of popcorn. It's the same concept that in a cooler, just ice isn't going to cool down your drink as fast as ice water, because there's more surface area to turn your drink a different temperature. It's also important that you use something with a steam vent. If you don't use something with a steam vent, you'll want to crack that just a little bit. And a little shake every once in a while is fine. If we were making kettle corn or caramel corn, it would be a different story because we'd want to keep that sugar from burning. This is just hopping around. Add my butter. Add some salt. Toss it around. And this popcorn strikes me as a little bit old. I might actually take this back to the store because I've had a whole cup of popcorn almost fill this bowl completely before. It is. It's a little old. And I can tell just kind of by the way this falls apart in my mouth. It's fine, but I think I'm gonna take it back to the grocery store and ask if they have any more fresh popcorn in back. Derailed my shooting day just a little bit, but I'm kind of glad it happened because now we can see the difference between a really good popcorn and something that's been sitting around a little bit, something that's old. First, I'm going to clean this. This has salt and butter in it, both of which have solids that'll burn a little bit, and our oil's not going to be quite right. So I'm going to clean and dry this. I'm going to reset here. Then it's popcorn time. I'm all set again. I did take all of the unpopped kernels out just for science, and I wasn't lying. It is about half unpopped. Now, all of these kernels are a little bit expanded. They still did have that water reaction inside, so this probably isn't quite half a cup, but I did exclude a lot of these that were under popped, if we can see that right there. Right, there were a lot that looked like this. All right, let's see. Oh, I can already tell just by putting that cup in and listening to it. That's some fresh stuff. About a quarter cup of oil. A couple of tester kernels that I'm going to get really nice and coated in the oil. And if I can, I'm going to try to get those pretty close to the center of the pot. All right, much faster already. The third one always takes a long time to pop. There we go. In with the corn. Make sure we're all coated in oil. It should go a lot faster this time. Now, I don't usually do that. I don't usually go return things to the store. I don't usually send food back to a kitchen. The only other time I took food back to a store was to a butcher who I found 2 little bone shards in his ground beef, and I really only took it back there because I would want to know if that was my business. I wasn't expecting anything, and of course he replaced it. This was more of a learning experience. And I'm using table salt for this. You can use popcorn salt. It gets a little pricey. The finer the salt, the more satisfying it's gonna be on the popcorn. I recommend not using kosher salt or sea salt because it's just too coarse and it all ends up on the bottom of the bowl. But you don't need to buy popcorn salt if you don't have it. Take some kosher salt, take some sea salt, take some table salt, put it in a plastic bag, use a rolling pin. Salt is a mineral. It's gonna break down to the base molecule that it is, and that's gonna give you a really fine popcorn salt. It's already a much more violent popping. These would probably pop up to about here if I didn't have the lid on. Once that popping has subsided, off with the heat. In with this butter. A little bit of salt. Now that looks nice. I can already tell that there's a lot less seeds in there, or kernels rather. Let's see if we can even see the bottom. Yeah, I mean there's a few, but there's gonna be a few. Anyway, let's see how this tastes. Nice and crunchy and delicious and fresh tasting. That first batch that I made that was less than this, it was too much butter and salt. But now that I have closer to all the popcorn popped, the amount of butter and salt that I used is perfect. So for me, for fresh popcorn that's going to pop as much as it's gonna pop, 2 tablespoons of butter, and I just lightly salt the top and toss it, and that's perfect for me. You're gonna figure out what's perfect for you. Some people like this aggressively, like potato chip salty, and some people don't like it salty at all. Same with butter. All the way to the store, I had the hull of the popcorn kind of in my throat. I'm not getting this with the fresh popcorn. This is nice. Very satisfying. All right, so way too much popcorn for one guy for one sitting. I could probably eat this whole bowl. But for the sake of snacking during the rest of the week, we'll take a gallon-sized bag, just put some of this away. And you'll notice the popcorn starting to get a little less awesome as time goes by, but I've eaten this up to a week and it's been fine. And I'd much rather take this bag with me to work and have some popcorn on my lunch break than to bring a microwave bag of popcorn. It still doesn't taste as good. It still doesn't smell as good. Now I have a snack for the week, or a snack to stick in my bag for the movie theater, when that's a thing again. And a snack for right now. So just for the sake of continuity, let's measure out these unpopped kernels. And the thing that I'm noticing too is that this is really the first partially popped kernel that I'm coming across. Everything else looks really, really good. But there's my point right there. Not nearly as much as before. It's barely 2 layers, not even a 1/4 cup. And look at how much more we got.